There is a plethora of information on the internet when it comes to trading. And that was similar to what my uncle was talking about in the podcast is truly like the ultimate basics of trading is get my dad a Lambo. If you could make an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month, I think if you guys follow me on social media, you know that I preach that my strategy is elementary. I think I say it's just the perfect way to say it. I view myself, and I have utter confidence in myself and in my strategy and in my system, is truly like the ultimate basics of trading. It is trend lines. And today I want to kind of walk you guys through how I found success in the elementary strategy of trading, or the elementary side of a system, essentially, and why it's important though. So the first thing is I want to go over what the ultimate problem is, and I'll go ahead and just have you guys drop it in the chat. What are you guys' biggest struggles? I can almost guarantee I already know the first top 3, but as traders, you guys are here looking for specifically trading advice. Risk management, absolutely. We got psychology. Where to start? Okay, that's the one I was looking for. Where to start? Where do you start? There is so much. There is a plethora of information on the internet when it comes to trading. Where do you start? How do you know what system? How do you know what strategy? How do you know what instrument? How do you know what time frame? How do you know what mentor? How do you know what course? How do you know what videos to watch? There is a black hole of information on the internet. So obviously it makes sense, since there is so much information, how can you narrow it down? How can you find the easiest way to get into this? So everything that you guys are gonna learn tonight in the webinar, which make sure you guys have notes. I'm gonna go through a few bullet points that I want you guys to kind of sear into your brain. If you gotta type it into your notes on your phone or write it down on a sticky note, it's gonna be very helpful, especially for those that answered, where to start. The next question that I had is, how many of you guys saw the podcast that I did with my uncle, which was in the trading space, broke the internet? Some people thought that I didn't have an actual uncle, he didn't exist, and this was a whole facade I was putting on. If you did not, be sure to go to YouTube. It's the most recent video that I've got. His face is plastered all over the thumbnail. You can't miss it. It's the Uncle Mike, I kept this a secret YouTube video, but just put that on your watch list. We gotta stay tuned for now because we've only got an hour with you guys tonight. But in that podcast, for most of you guys that saw it, what do you guys think the main theme was? And the coolest part, while you guys are typing that into the chat, I didn't really get to dictate where the conversation was going. When I sit down and have a conversation with my uncle, it could go in either direction. This could be a life lesson. This could be almost like church. I mean, depending on how religious he's feeling that day or how in touch with the Lord he's feeling. It could be like almost a coming to Jesus even outside of actual religion. Like, what are you doing with your life? Are you motivated? Or it could be a trading discussion. And I was hoping, obviously, we could really get heavy, nitty gritty in the trading. And I wanted everyone to know his time frame, his instrument, his psychology, his strategy. And instead, he just talked about what was heavy on his heart, or what he thought was most important for traders. And what it was essentially, one was getting off social media, which is ironic because you guys found this webinar because of social media. So there's pros and cons, obviously, to social media. But he was just making sure that you know the balance with social media. When you're looking for a strategy or looking to get into trading, naturally you kind of want to immerse yourself in the industry. You want to figure out everything that's out there. And that's where the problem is, because there's too much information. Where if you can just kind of hone in on one strategy, one system, which it doesn't even have to be mine. Mine happens to be, I'm blessed to have found my strategy. Mine happens to be the easiest one to make me X amount of money. I'll get into a little bit of the goals and how close I am to my goal later on in the webinar tonight, but very exciting news. But it's truly just the easiest system. Now there's plenty of other systems. There's ICT, there's SMC, there is trading based on fundamentals, on purely just news, making a decision based on economic news or political news. So there's a lot of ways that you can be successful and consistent and profitable in trading, but I don't think the strategy is the issue here. I think it is the committing to one. So let's say that some of you guys are fundamental traders and you trade based on news. You do your research, you do hours of research on whatever news is happening, and then you make your decision. And then let's say, 4 weeks, you've tried it, and then you're not able to find the success, so you move on to the next strategy. And then you do the same repeatedly over and over again. And I think that is the epitome of traders getting into this industry, is strategy hopping. If you can truly just hone in on one strategy, you guys are much better off. And that was similar to what my uncle was talking about in the podcast, was just find one mentor, one system, even one instrument. He said he traded two, I believe, which was YM and the NQ. But for the most part, I believe he just trades one and has traded one. So this is kind of the theme of tonight. One system, one strategy, one mentor, one instrument, one time frame. Just keeping it as simple as we possibly can. So I'm going back to the problem of trading. So essentially it's overwhelming. There's an excess of information. We understand that. And what I want to highlight is the easiest strategy, the most elementary, which is taking it way back to the basics. And I know you guys have heard this term before, which is the trend is your friend. I'm sure when everyone gets into trading, that is like one of the most common phrases that you learn or that you come across in trading. The trend is your friend. We are bringing it way, way back to that simple of a strategy. Now, I do want to know if you guys know the statistic of traders that actually make it. It's the 90%. There was actually a trader, one of the educators or influencers in the space, Trader Nick, who posted something today, and I'd already had this part of the webinar planned, but it was the 90-90-90. 90% of traders lose 90% of their capital in 90 days. How true that is, I don't know, but it sounds pretty accurate. And I believe that's fairly close to true. So now my next question for you guys is, most of you guys are here tonight, you're trying to find that profitability, that consistency, or that secret sauce from this webinar. But now I am curious, what makes you guys think that you're going to be in the 10%? And it's not me trying to challenge anyone or say that anyone's lesser than. I am just curious to know, what do you guys think puts you or is gonna put you in the 10%? Because I want you guys to get hyped. You gotta have something. You gotta have at least some confidence that you are gonna be in that 10%. Because if you don't even have that, you might not make it. So I can see a lot of awesome answers. I see determination, I see we're not giving up, I see the willingness, the dedication, self-awareness, consistency. I mean, okay, all of these are the attributes to a successful trader. So as long as you guys know and believe that you're gonna be in that 10%, we're already a little bit ahead of the curve. We're already a little bit up there. You got to have the confidence at bare minimum. Okay, and then now, if you guys are like, okay, I can be in that 10%, what does it look like? What does the actual success of that look like? Now, I have been able to showcase that in the most genuine, realistic way that I possibly could. I think that's what kind of drew all of you guys to me or to my social media, is that I'm not one of the gurus that flexes the Lambos and the Richard Millies and the crazy mansions or the private jets. I've never even been on a private jet. I'm able to find profitability and consistency in trading. And the best and biggest, and to be honest, the number one dream result from trading is the time freedom. And luckily, I had a mentor, my uncle, who did not flex any of those things either. So when I got into trading, my dream result was never Lambos and Richard Millies. I say Richard Millie, just the nice watches and the private jets. It was never that. That was never the end goal. I didn't really know that was possible with trading because I only got to see the success of my uncle, which was he never worked a job. He was home all the time. He took our family on trips. I was like, okay, so if I learn what he does, I can reap the same benefits. I can reap the same rewards. I get to stay home. I get to take my family on trips, and that's exactly what I want. And that's always been the goal. So I want you guys to kind of paint this picture in your head as well. So I want you guys to think, while I'm going through this next topic, think about the ultimate dream result for you. So now, it very well could be a Lambo. It could be, all I want to do is get my dad a Lambo. I want to get my dad a boat. So that's totally fair. But now, the first thing I want to ask you guys is the realistic results. What do you guys, just at bare minimum, want to get out of trading? Now, the next question I'm going to ask is, when I say realistic results, I don't want you guys to take a step down or to make your dreams smaller. So with that being said, what is your ultimate level 10, I've made it dream results? So my dream results, I've still got goals that I haven't hit yet in trading. I want to make $1 million in trading profits within one trading year. That's one of my goals. I want to get my dad a boat. I want to take my family on trips regularly. Absolutely. Creating generational wealth. If I could create generational wealth to where my kids are comfortable, I've made it. That's how I know I've absolutely made it. Now that's absolutely positive or possible. So I want you guys to think of the realistic results first. Think of the time freedom. Think of the getting out of debt. Thinking the quitting the 9 to 5. My biggest goal when I'm teaching, when I'm encouraging people to get into trading, it's never really to create one stream of income with trading. I want to encourage, and this maybe is just me as a person, I want to encourage you guys to, yes, leave the 9 to 5. That will always be the goal. But not not just cut off that stream of income, but move into the entrepreneurial side of finance or of the workforce, is being your own boss now. Don't having someone to answer to, creating your own hours, your own rules. I think, and that's something that I preach, and I think it's incredibly important, is just never having one source of income. And this is a question for you guys, and I actually sat, whenever I was creating these notes for the webinar, I was like, okay, let me see if I can think of one singular trader, whether they're an educator or an influencer, or just a successful trader in general, how many of them actually have one stream of income? And if you guys know, drop it in the chat, but there is none. I don't know any that have one stream of income that is just purely trading. Yeah, there may be 1%, it could be less than that. If there is a personal trader that you know, or just someone in your life. I know trading is hard to come by, so you probably don't actually know in person very many traders. Luckily, the internet has brought us all together where we can find each other. But let's say that there is a trader that does not sell courses. I can almost guarantee they have another business, whether that is real estate, whether that is e-commerce, whether that is running an actual business. If you guys watch the podcast that I did with my uncle, he had an alarm business. That was his very first thing. His alarm business became successful, which allowed him to have more money to invest in trading. Then from there, he had e-commerce, he had real estate, and I want to follow in those same footsteps. Now with me, my streams of income are a little bit different than my uncle's because I'm living in a different generation to where I can make money on the internet now too. I can make money being an influencer, being an educator, real estate, long-term investments, even kind of getting connected with a financial advisor to know, okay, where do I need to put, if I've got a mutual fund, if I've got a life insurance policy. I need you guys to just think multiple sources of income across the board, point blank period, even if you guys decide to take my accelerator or take my course or take any of my education. All I hope is that you guys do get that part out of it. We've got to have multiple streams of income, and I'm always going to push for that. So if you guys are trying to purely just leave your 9 to 5 and have trading as your main source of income, I'm just going to advise against it. That's my personal preference. I think always multiple streams of income, point blank period. Okay, but then moving on to the next part. This is the fun part where I was talking about the 1-1-1, keeping it simple. So this is the 3-step solution to your problem. I'm kidding. This was the easiest, most catchy way that I could come up with the simplicity to my strategy. And it was the kind of the 1-1-1 rule. So the first one is one strategy, one singular strategy. The next one is one mentor, and then 1 hour a day. So I believe those 3 things, I kid you not, if you decide to go as far away from trend lines as possible, I still think you're gonna find profitability with the 1-1-1, with the one strategy, the one mentor, and the 1 hour a day. Whether you decide to trade supply and demand, support and resistance, if I knew anything about ICT, I would use examples, but I don't know anything about it. But regardless, if you use any strategy, I truly think the 1-1-1 rule is gonna get you guys from struggling, maybe stagnant, maybe just not seeing success or just not able to get that leg up. That's it right there. Now, the importance of the simple strategy though. This part I want to talk about, and I'm gonna go a little bit more into it later on in the webinar when I'm talking about science experiments and kind of the variables, but I'll give you just a little tidbit or brief overview is that the least amount of variables, the better. If you've got too many, you don't know what's working, what's not. So we'll get more into that a little bit later. But then the one mentor is also important because if you're listening to one person on the internet saying to do this, and then you've got this guy saying to do this, and this guy saying to do this, now which one do you choose? Which person do you listen to? And obviously that just makes sense. You're gonna get confused. That's just not gonna work. So truly just listening to and letting one singular mentor kind of steer you in the right direction. When you're veering off the path a little bit, just having that same mentor bring you right back. Okay, this is what you should be doing. So the importance of just one mentor is huge, and I know that's hard because there's so many people selling everything in your face all over the internet. They're like, listen to me, I'm right. That person's not right, I'm right. ICT's a fraud, I'm right. Or this guy, he's a scammer, he's not right, listen to me. I truly think if you guys can just find one person, now it's gonna be tricky to find one, but you've gotta have a little bit of discernment. You gotta be able to do your research and truly find someone that their style resonates with you. So it's gonna be tricky too, I understand that part, but once you do, stick to one. And then the last thing is 1 hour a day. You guys already know that applies in whatever you're trying to do, whether you're working out, trying to start a business, the 1 hour a day thing that creates the habits. So those were the 1-1-1s. But now the next question I have for you guys, and this has always been, this is like probably a lifelong debate in the trading industry. What do you guys think is most important? Is it psychology or is it strategy? That's like does the chicken come first or does the egg come first? Is there an actual answer? Who knows? Well, I'm gonna let you guys know there isn't a right answer. I think you gotta gotta have both. But obviously, if you've got good psychology, it will help any strategy. Whereas if you've got a good strategy but not good psychology, that just doesn't benefit. But the good psychology will help across the board. So the benefit of having good psychology is gonna be a little bit, I'd say it tips the scale just a little bit. But still, I don't think there's any right answer. You gotta have both. But fascinating to hear that you guys think psychology is it. Now, I will say that when I am talking about psychology, it is emotions, it is confidence, it is maintaining discipline. And there was something that I had listened to. I don't know if you guys have heard of Alex Hormozi. Have you guys heard of Alex Hormozi? He's an excellent business strategist. He helps entrepreneurs, like, I'm talking 10x, 100x. One thing that I heard on one of his podcasts, one of his webinars, was preparation equals confidence. So if you guys are, let's say you're getting, maybe you're not even live, maybe you haven't gone live yet, you're just paper trading, you're sim trading, and you have this crippling anxiety. You're not prepared, so you're not ready, you're not confident. And I think making sure the preparation is there, the foundation, then you know that's where the confidence comes into play. Then you guys won't be so nervous to go live, to place that trade. So making sure that the preparation is there. And he's a little bit more harsh than I am, but essentially he was like, if you're nervous, you haven't done enough work. Work harder. Try again. I believe, yes, sometimes there's nerves naturally. You can kind of turn them into excitement instead of nervousness. You can kind of trick yourself. But for the most part, if there is this crippling anxiety or nervousness, it's because there's not enough preparation. So you need to continue to prep, continue to prepare, continue to get the reps in. I think that's one of the biggest parts about psychology. That's how you build your psychology, is you prepare mentally. There are, even outside of the trading space, it's always the same concept. There's many concepts that just apply to simply being an entrepreneur, running a business, that correlate with success in trading. So if you guys are into self-help, if you guys are into leveling up, doing webinars, going to conventions, I can guarantee you those will help in your trading. Okay, and then the next part is strategy. So now we can kind of talk about this science experiment that I was talking about. So when we're trying to find a strategy, which is hard because there's probably thousands of different ways to trade. Probably thousands, that's what I'm gonna guess. And figuring out which one resonates with you. I understand that some of you guys here in the webinar tonight might not resonate or might not be able to make trend lines work for them. And I'm gonna guarantee that for the most part, it's gonna be the traders that have too much experience, that they're like, there's no possible way that something as basic as trend lines can make me or generate me money in the markets. And that's usually, it's like the hardest thing, to take it back to the basics after you've immersed yourself in trading and different strategies for years. I'm not saying there's no hope, because there is, but it's usually the ones that know too much that have the hardest time making trend lines work. But regardless, even if you decide not to go with trend lines, trying to find something simple enough for you to understand. And I'm talking like, you can't be intimidated by it. You have to believe you can do it. And trend lines just checks all of the boxes. When I was first introduced to looking at a chart, the chart itself, I was like, okay, it's a little bit intimidating. We got a graph, we got, the X and the Y axis, we've got some movement here, we've got some bars, some candlesticks. Then my uncle threw some lines on it. He threw some trend lines on the screen. I was still able to follow. I wasn't intimidated. So you got to find something that resonates with you. You got to have full confidence that you can understand it to its fullest. And what easier way to do than trend lines? Now, why would you want to trade a simple system? I think the reason why most people gravitate towards me anyways is because I'm able to do the least amount of effort, the least amount of research, the least amount of all of it to get my success. I had tunnel vision. I never lost sight where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need to try something else. Maybe my uncle, what he taught me isn't gonna work for me. Maybe he's not being truthful. And I'm not gonna lie, there were moments where I had some intrusive thoughts, but I never acted on them. I never was like, you know what? Let's try something else. And that's the coolest part. Keeping it simple. If you can find a system, that's why you guys try to find webinars. That's why you guys do courses, is because you don't want to do the trial and error yourself. So if I can get you guys from point A to point B in the fastest and requires the least amount of research and the least amount of time, that's what I'm here for. And that's exactly what my uncle did for me. You guys, this is gonna blow some of you guys' minds, but when my uncle taught me, he kept it as simple as possible. I never learned about Fibonacci. I had to learn that word while getting into social media, and I'm pretty sure I mispronounced it for most of my year on social media. I didn't even know how to place a stop loss when my uncle taught me. That's one of the craziest things that I think people won't understand. I never used take profits, didn't know what they were. I didn't even really know what the Forex market was. He made sure that everything he taught me was just, I'm talking bare bones. like the bare bones. So when he was done teaching me, I was able to place a trade, generate money, generate income, just open, close a trade, and just do this consistently. He wasn't like, okay, I need you to go, I'm showing you how to do these trend lines, but now I need you to go research the earnings reports for X, Y, and Z. And I need you to do some research on the correlation between these Forex pairs. Like, when I tell you guys, it was bare bones. It was, here is a chart, this is the price, and this is the time in between each bar. Okay, I can read a chart, easy. I didn't even know what a candlestick was. He had, if some of you guys, I know a lot of you guys are newbies, but for the experienced traders, you guys know that there's different types of charts you can look at. You can look at a line chart, you can look at a bar chart, you can look at a candlestick chart. There's a few other options as well. But we just looked at the bar chart, kept it as simple as possible. He even had all of the colors stay the same. We didn't have red bars and green bars. So I'm telling you, he just dumbed it down for me, and that's what I want to do for you guys. Dumb it down. So yes, if you guys decide to learn with me, you're not going to be incredibly educated on what moves the market, what moves the dollar. It's simply just, I want to get you guys from point A to point B. And this kind of leads back into I was wondering how many of you guys work the 9-to-5s. Well, now I'm curious how many of you guys are already entrepreneurs. I feel like this strategy is for the entrepreneur. This is truly what I feel like. Now, obviously, it's going to be for the newbies and for the 9-to-5ers. I think making the segue to entrepreneur is going to be your best bet. But when I tell you that this strategy is for the entrepreneurs, it truly is. One, because it does not require 100% of your attention. You can still focus on your business. You can focus on that side gig. I know some of you guys, someone said I own a juice bar, but it requires a lot of your time, a lot of your attention. You have to focus on that. So how could you possibly make trading work when it requires hours upon hours every day of research, of figuring out the strategy, comprehending it, making sure it makes sense to you? And that's the coolest part about the strategy, is that it's simple. So the entrepreneur, your basic everyday entrepreneur who has a business to run, who's maybe got a family, a 9-to-5, maybe you're going to school, that has too much of their attention already taken up, this is too perfect. We're not gonna go too into the nitty-gritty. When you're done with the strategy or you're done learning, you truly will be able to trade. There's no more prerequisites, there's no additional assignments, it's just simply you repeating what we've just learned. If I was to tell you that the strategy that you're going to learn is the easiest, takes the least amount of time, least amount of effort, and it's gonna get you from point A to point B, I can guarantee you guys are gonna choose that path instead of the path of, okay, this is gonna be a really complex strategy, there's a lot to it, I've got to learn order blocks and the correlation between buyers and sellers, and I've got to do my research on the news coming up each day, and I've got to make sure that I'm in front of the charts an hour before and an hour after market close. Maybe that strategy could make you more. It's going to require a lot more time and a lot more learning, but I can guarantee you guys, if I was to show you an easier path and it can make you X amount, make you at least, we'll say like a solid, now it's all gonna be dependent on capital size, obviously, but let's say an average amount, if you could make an extra $1,000 to $2,000 a month, I think that's absolutely a great place to start. And then the more that you build your capital, the more that you can make every month. You'll get to a point where I'm gonna be talking about how close I am to my goal, and I'm almost at my 200K mark for the year, which is double what I did last year and the year before that. So it's just, the more you do it, the bigger that you increase your position size. It's the same strategy. What I'm doing now is the same thing I was doing when my uncle taught me. It is just simply getting the confidence to increase your position size, building that capital, that actual capital and that mental capital as well. There was a phase where in my kind of this movement onto social media where I was very self-conscious at first, and I was like, maybe my strategy maybe it's not that great, and I was able to find my own success in trading, but I'm seeing some of these guys make millions, and I'm like, I'm not anywhere near close to that. I'm not making millions. I'm just making a few $1,000s extra a month. And I had to bring it full circle and be like, okay, you know what? Maybe some of these guys maybe some are not actually profitable or actually making the results that they're saying they're making. Or if they are, maybe they've just got so much more capital. So there was a disconnect. And when I was able to kind of bring it full circle and be like, okay, the strategy that I'm trading, it may not be Einstein. It may not be this crazy complex strategy that's gonna make me the most it possibly can, but it makes me enough. And it's not overwhelming, and it's tangible, it's digestible, and it gets me where I need to go. And I truly think that is trend lines and trend reversals and the bounce and the break. There's a lot of different ways to trade. For the newbies, they may not know some of those terms, but there's a lot of different ways to trade trend lines specifically. But man, when you can just bring it down to the basics, it's so important. And I do want to talk about the science experiment kind of part of it. And this will go to, the next one is just implementation, which I'll get into the implementation part next, but the science experiment. So let's say that you guys are trying to figure out, I'm going to give you guys an example of what I did back in elementary school. I can't remember if I did too many science experiments, but I do remember one, and it was trying to figure out what food would make this plant grow the most. And I had 3 of the same exact plants. But now, if you were to truly figure out what food could make these plants grow the most, or the highest, or the biggest, you want to make sure that you're keeping as many variables, making sure that there's least amount of variables. Let's say that you've got the same plant, you've got the same soil, you've got the same amount of light, you've got the same amount of liquid that you're giving each one, but now the only thing that's different is the type of food that you're giving each one. Then you can see very clearly and easily, okay, so I fed this plant soda. It died. Turns out it didn't work. This one I gave milk, this one I gave water, this one I gave orange juice. Maybe we're doing 3 or 4. But when you keep those variables small, you can see very easily what worked and what didn't. Imagine as a trader trying to figure out what works and what doesn't when you've got 3 different types of lighting, you've got 3 different types of soil, you've got indicators, moving averages, you've got the news, fundamentals, you've got this guy saying this. How could you possibly find success or find what works when you've got too many variables? And I think that's truly the epitome of trading, or just retail trading specifically, is just trying to find consistent when you got too many variables. You got way too many variables. So keeping it simple. And that's where, if you've got something as simple as trend lines, then you can even experiment with the trend lines. So let's say that you're trading trend line bounces and maybe it doesn't work for you. So now you're gonna try trend line breaks, and then maybe you find a little bit more success. And then now we can start maybe experimenting with time frames. Same strategy, same trend line breaks, but now I'm gonna try the 4 hour, now I'm gonna try the 1 hour. So truly keeping the amount of variables as small as possible is gonna be, it goes back to that 1-1-1, that one mentor, one strategy, and 1 hour a day. You can see results if you just keep it smaller. Test, do a little bit of trial and error, see what works for you. Even the strategy that my uncle taught me, I do things that just a hair different than what my uncle does. And that's because I had very small amount of variables, and I was able to experiment and say, okay, you know what? So when my uncle taught me, we traded the bounce of trend lines. I stopped. I haven't traded the bounce of a trend line in maybe 2 years, maybe even more than that. And it was simply just from experimenting, doing a little trial and error, and seeing within that same strategy what worked for me and what didn't. And some of you guys are gonna experiment yourselves. I mean, some of you guys will be able to incorporate maybe a moving average into the trend line strategy, and you can see if it works because it's only one variable. You're just adding one new thing. Does it work or does it not? If it does, okay, cool. Now we're gonna continue this. We're gonna continue the moving average with the trend line break, and now we can try different time frames. So I know some of the terminology for the newbies, it might be going over your head, but for the most part, I'm just trying to emphasize the simplicity. And this is the theme of tonight's webinar, is the elementary version of trading. And I am your elementary school teacher tonight, and I'm here to teach the simplicity of a strategy, and that it can be done. It can be easy. I know that sounds wild, that trading can be easy. I don't want to say that it doesn't require the reps, because it does. Just like that 1 hour a day, that's a big part of it. You can't just simply try this for 3 weeks and then just say, all right, I'm ready to go. Like, you've got to continue the 1 hour a day. That can't stop. You've got to continue to build that habit. So the 1 hour a day helps, and it creates that habit. It gets the reps in, and it makes it so much easier when you do decide to do trial and error, or experiment, or add something a little bit different here, or something a little bit different here. So I know I talked about strategy way too much, but now let's go over the implementation part. So this is simply, when you're learning a trendline strategy, it can be implemented to, and I don't know if some of you guys know this, but trend lines, obviously, if we are, let's say we're looking at a chart, and I could tell you that it's any chart. As long as you see movement and you can draw a trend line on a chart, this strategy can be implemented. So the coolest part is this could be the stock market. I know someone was talking about, I was looking in the chat, someone said something about Tesla or Amazon. You guys can absolutely draw trend lines on a Tesla chart or an Amazon chart. And then, okay, so someone's talking about Bitcoin and gold. The coolest part is you can draw a trend line in the crypto charts. You can draw a trend line on gold. If you drew one on gold, it'd probably be insanely steep, because gold is continuing to create, actually, you know what? It has pulled back a little bit, but for the most part, it was creating higher highs. It was blowing my mind. But you can implement this to any market. That's the coolest part. And then it gets better. Not only is it any market, you can draw a trend line on any time frame. You can draw a trend line on a 5-minute time frame. You can draw a trend line on a 1 hour time frame, a 4 hour time frame, a daily. I mean, if we've got any long-term investors out there, they're trading on the weekly. You can draw a trend line on any one of these time frames. So that's the coolest part. That goes back to, this is implementation, but now it's still simple. simple. It's still easy. We're still doing that 1-1-1. This is still a simple strategy. We've got one singular mentor. If it's me, if it's not, continue to listen to that one mentor that you already listened to or that you've been researching, but it's just in that 1 hour a day. And that's gonna be the entire theme of tonight, is just that 1-1-1. But the implementation part is cool because it makes so much sense. So we got a simple strategy, and then how cool that it can just simply be copy and pasted to a different market, a different time frame, a different instrument. And now the 1 hour a day though, this is where it gives you a little bit more of an edge. So let's say that you've got the strategy down, you got the psychology down, you've listened to one mentor, and you've got one strategy. The 1 hour a day gives you that edge because now you are developing a relationship with the instrument. If you are watching Bitcoin or crude oil or platinum for 1 hour a day, you are developing a relationship. You're kind of getting a feel for its movement, its volatility. When does it make moves? What's an average move? What's a sporadic move? What's a big move? What's average? Is it around, 6 p.m. to midnight that it just kind of putters out? You develop that relationship by just simply watching that instrument for 1 hour a day. And that is just even more of an edge. So just sticking with the 1-1-1. And oh my gosh, and I almost forgot about talking about my goals, which leads into this as well. My goal this year was to hit 200K in trading profits. And I am now $8,000 away from hitting my yearly profit goal. And it's only October 15th. So that is the coolest part. If I make that $8,000 tonight, I am now done trading for the year. And I don't think it gets any cooler than that. Now, I will let you know that it is weighing heavy on my psychology, and this last trade is driving me insane. I'm almost too hesitant. I'm being too careful. There were moves in crude oil that I missed that I'm looking at the charts. I'm watching crude oil. The price is breaking one of my trend lines. I'm even talking to my sister about it. I'm like, I'm getting ready to get into a trade. She's like, ooh, let me guess. Let me look and see which one it is. So she pulls up her charts and she's like, ooh, is it crude oil because it's breaking? I was like, yep, I'm getting into crude oil. And I never did. Didn't do it. Or like platinum. There were moves in platinum to the upside that I missed. So my psychology is a little bit off because I'm getting so close to this goal, which is double my goal last year. So it's taken a little bit of a toll on me. This is just me being vulnerable with you guys, telling you the psychology that I'm struggling with in these last $8,000 to make it to the 200K. And I think the craziest part, the kicker here, is that it only took me less than 15 trades. So that 200K, we're almost at 200, is less than 15 trades. Whereas last year, my goal was simply, I just wanted to make $100,000, and I believe it took me somewhere around 75 trades. If some of you guys follow me on social media, you know that last year I was struggling with the 4 hour time frame. This year I've got it down. Now I am a beautiful representation of what a higher time frame, what the benefits of a higher time frame looks like, and truly just embracing it to the maximum. Least amount of trades, least amount of chart time. I'm engaged less in the markets, so now I can focus on 100 other things. I want to have so many streams of income. I want to think like my uncle does. And some just personal goals that I have this year is I have been researching getting into real estate all year. Am I going to get an investment property? Am I going to get my own property? Am I going to do a duplex? Am I going to do a multifamily home? And I want to be able to also have my own business in the trading industry. So now I want to work towards, now I don't know what that is. This is me also being very open with you guys. It could be a program. It could be a platform. It could be an app. I am looking to kind of make my mark in the trading industry. So I need more time and I need more focus to do that. Outside of my trading, outside of my social media, outside of my education, I'm trying to really just immerse myself as the boss entrepreneur that I am becoming. And I am actually trying to bring my students into the same mindset as well. Just multiple streams of income, just being the best version of an entrepreneur that you can possibly be. Thanks for hanging out, everybody. See ya.